4:01 p.m. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the October 8th, 2020 Fire Station Building Committee. Excuse me. Okay, we're calling. Can people turn off, could people mute their sounds, please? I know you don't mean, because I did the same thing. Okay, take roll. So when I call your name, you can take it off mute and say here. Mayor Wiedegartner,
Here.
Chief Hawkins,
Here,
I mean Butch Hawkins, sorry.
I like the elevation.
Butch, yeah, you've been promoted. Where are you? Butch is here.
Right
Chief
here.
Strahan,
Yes.
David Muscarotolo. He's here, I know. Say here.
Yes.
Here, great.
Yes, here.
Carol Collins, just for the record, Carol Collins.
Here.
Amy McMahon.
Here.
Here, great. Herb Forgy. See you, Herb. Practice switching off the mute. All right, we'll take your nod. Steve Draculich. Steve? No, Steve's here.
Yeah. He's on mute.
He's,
Can't hear you, Steve.
okay, I see you. Jen Stromsten? Here?
Here.
Thank you.
David, can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
I just want you to let you know I just put the recording on.
Oh, you want me to start again? I'll start again.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. So I'll call the meeting to order at 4:03 p.m. This is the meeting of the Fire Station Building Committee on October 8th, 2020. Voting members are the mayor. Is the mayor here?
Yes, she is.
Butch Hawkins,
Present.
Chief Strahan? Here? Can you say here?
Yes, here.
Thank you. David Mascarotolo?
Here.
Carol Collins?
Here.
Amy McMahon?
Here.
Thank you, Amy. Herb Forgy?
Here.
Great. Steve Draculich? He's waving. He can't do it yet. We'll help him out. Jen Stromsten? Liz
Here.
Gilman? David
Here.
Singer? Here. Gene Wall? Okay,
Here.
those are all the voting members. Non-voting members, George Vandelinder? Marla Warner? Fernando Flori? Robert Hay? John Andrews? I thought John was here. Just said he was here.
Yep.
Eric Turok?
Hi. Hi, baby. That's a nice coat.
All right, you can put on mute now. Laura Phelps? Ed Jarvis? Thank you, Ed. Greg
Here.
Diefendorf? Peter McIver? Neil Joyce?
Here.
Neil, you
Here.
Neil? There you are. Good. Okay.
Here.
I'm going to assume that you all got the minutes for the September 24th meeting. If you didn't, speak up.
Hey, David, can I mention
Yes.
one thing? Can you ask if anybody from the public
Hi,
is
baby.
recording the meeting?
Yeah, I don't have that on my
Give us
sheet.
some, drip
But it
clean
should
out of your
be.
nose.
Okay, this meeting is being recorded by the town of Greenfield. If there's anyone else recording this meeting, you have to tell me, the chairperson, now that you're doing so. Is there anyone here that's recording the meeting? Okay, anyone else?
I'm not recording, but I need to tell someone, everybody who has an open mic should go on mute because we're getting background noise from somewhere.
Right. So you just have to switch on and off. On, you want to speak on, otherwise off. I'll have to learn the same lesson, but I'm the leader of the gang here. So, okay. I assume everybody has gotten a copy of the minutes. If you have not, please let me know. Okay. So I want to have a motion, please, to approve the minutes of the September 24th, 2020 meeting.
So moved.
A motion.
That's Roxanne.
I'll
Mayor.
second.
Who second?
David,
Okay. Are there any questions, any comments from anyone about the minutes? All right. Sorry to have to keep doing this, but I think for the right reasons, I am going to have to go through a roll call vote for everything that we do, just to make sure, because we're not at the meeting altogether. So roll call vote to approve the minutes. Mayor,
Yes, approved.
Butch Hawkins,
Yes.
Chief Strahan,
Approved.
David Mascarotallo,
Approved.
Carol Collins,
Yes.
Amy McMahon. Amy, do you approve the minutes?
I do.
Thank you. Herb Forgy, do you approve the minutes?
Approved.
Steve Dracolich, do you approve the minutes?
Yes.
Jen Stromsten, do you approve the minutes?
Yes.
Liz Gilman, approve the
Yes.
minutes? David Singer, approve the minutes? Yes. Jean Wall, approve the minutes?
Yes.
Great, thank you. All right, moving on in the agenda. Let's hear from David and what happened at the temporary fire station subcommittee meeting, and if there's any action steps that need to be taken at today's meeting.
Absolutely. So we had our meeting yesterday. I apologize again. It was supposed to be on Monday. It will be on the Monday before the Thursday meeting moving forward. We had a short meeting. We had some technical difficulties, and the chief and the rest of the fire department got quite busy in the middle of the meeting with the storm and some other technical issues. So the meeting was dropped, and then a few of us were able to get back on. So it was definitely a shortened meeting for everybody's awareness. What we did go over is we talked about the survey that we got back from the city, and if there were any other outstanding information that we needed from the city. And it sounds like Dennis and Neil's crew got as much information as they needed to get back to start the pre-drawings. There was also a goal of putting a program together with the chief, and that was accomplished for the meeting. So what the fire department needs, what their needs was communicated to the architect, Dennis and Neil's group. And with that information, they were able to put together some pre-drawings of the location. So they're not full conceptual drawings. That will not happen until we have a signed contract with the architectural firm. So we really can't start full drawings yet until that's signed, sealed, and delivered, and the mayor's office is working on that. And hopefully by next meeting, we have that all taken care of. But there were drawings put together with the layout because now we know the utility information and the slope and all that. So we did review those drawings yesterday on the meeting. And at about that point, that's when the meeting was, folks dropped off, and then we had technical problems.
Thank you, David. Were you able to discuss in any details any of the costs of the project, of the temporary?
We did discuss some costs with Neil, and he could speak to that more if we want him to, with respect to just getting some pre-pricing, but only for the structures, the 3 structures. There was no pricing talked about with respect to other detailed information. It was just pre-pricing on structure that we talked about. That's all. We don't have a full set of architecturals, so it's going to be hard to come up with really good figures until we have a set of full architecturals.
Was there any discussion about leasing versus purchasing the temporary structure?
Yes, we did talk about leasing and the pricing. And Neil, if you want to join in, I think the estimates that Neil received were for leasing temporary structure for 2 years. But it's Neil, if you could talk a little bit more about it. I don't think were given any written quotes or anything like that. But Neil, correct me if I'm wrong.
We're waiting for a formal written scope from one of the vendors. Preliminary pricing on the 2 structures was approximately $750,000 for a 24-month lease for the apparatus bays, plural, it's 2 buildings, and secondary quote for the office trailers and modulars for about $250,000. And again, those are very rough estimates based on what we know now. In addition to those pieces, there are elements of the project that have yet to be defined, utilities, exact locations for tie-ins, exact fit-out needs for inside the trailers and the apparatus bays once they have arrived. Those numbers are being developed along with the program and the drawings, and we're hoping that in a couple of weeks, we'll have a first pass at a conceptual estimate for the temp station.
As a follow-up, is there a difference in pricing to purchase the temporaries versus leasing the temporaries?
My experience has been leasing is definitely a cheaper alternative than purchasing. However, we have not yet got to that level of detail with the prospective buyers. We certainly could do that, and we could include a buyout price at the end of the lease as part of the solicitation. We just would need to make that decision very likely early on in the project.
I guess what I'm trying to find out is we're trying to save costs at this end of the project. So I want people obviously are on here listening. I want the public to understand that there is a difference between leasing and purchasing, correct?
Yes,
And
there
that
is.
as far as we know now, the leasing will be less expensive than the purchasing. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And that the quotes you gave, David, although rough, were for leasing. So the company would charge that much money for each of those things for 2 years of leasing, or is that the cost of purchasing?
No, those were the cost of leasing.
So if I were to divide that 750 by 24 months, that would be the monthly cost. And if I took the 250 and divided that by 24 months, that's the cost per month. Okay. Is that fair to say? Yeah.
Not exactly, Dave. The vendors gave us a price for setup, installation, engineering up front, and then a monthly lease rate, and then also a breakdown cost at the conclusion of the lease.
And that's built
So it's not exactly straight line, Dave.
but the 750 includes those things?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Good. So we're starting to see some more information.
We are, yes.
Okay. Herb. It says Chris on the bottom. Herb Forgy, do you have something you want to say?
Yes, I understood. We were one of the people that got lost yesterday afternoon as we got blown into Burlington, but that leasing price only includes the buildings. It does not include the air handling and everything else that needs to be done in that building to make it useful for the vehicles and safe for the guys. Is that correct?
So,
Not entirely. The lease quote for the apparatus bays included a HVAC system that would have to be completed by another contractor. So the initial elements are all there. However, there would be some work downstream that would have to be completed.
Thanks, Neil.
so David, I just want to make a point that, we had, the subcommittee yesterday did not look at details. We looked at the drawings and we looked at the price that Neil had given us verbally, but there's a lot of details that need to be worked out and explained to the committee so we have a better idea of what the total price is. I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, thanks. Anybody else want any questions, any comments from anybody else? If you want, not everybody is on view, so if you want to say something, you have to go, I have to see you and you have to raise your hand. Okay. So David, here's what I'm thinking, and please, other members of the committee, please speak up. I don't need to be the only voice, but we're going to ask for an appropriation of the city council, which we're going to talk about next. And hopefully a first reading will be done in October and we'll be able to go before the city council in November. I'm sure that when we get before the council is going to want to have some level of detail about what we're doing for the temporary, what the cost is, how we might anticipate, getting the funds for the costs, for those costs. Is that something that you believe the temporary subcommittee can have available to us at least by that date? By the by the meeting in November?
I saw the mayor's hand up. Do you want to Mayor, did you have a comment or do you want me to speak? I think you might be on mute.
Who are you asking to talk, David?
No, the mayor was talking, but she was on mute. So
I was just going to say that actually was on the previous conversation, but I can maybe also speak to that one too. So, but I don't need to. You were addressing David. So I was just going to say, apropos of the previous conversation, lease versus purchase. I don't know at this point in time whether the city of Greenfield has a use for an additional building and therefore maybe purchasing. But I'm on board with the fact that what we want to do is spend the right amount of money for a temporary, but no more than the right amount of money. So we may make a decision to go with lease. And I think that would be a good decision to make, but we don't know that for a fact yet. When we see the difference in cost, I guess is what I'm trying to get to.
But the question is, can the Adam, I'm sorry, I'll get right to you.
Yeah, no, I got your question, but you were
Okay.
addressing that to David, so I was just going to let him answer. Yes, they will not take a vote until November. So Neil or David or somebody can tell us all whether there will be more accurate information by then.
Before you answer that, Ed, would you like to speak before they answer or can you wait? Okay, go ahead. Answer, please.
So it's going to be close. We have to get the architect on board and contracted and signed to a contract. Once the architect gets on board, they can really start plowing through getting the drawings, the full set of conceptual drawings completed. That's going to give us a chance to be able to go out and really get pricing, I's dotted and T's crossed. But I think that up until that point, I think we can get some really solid ballpark figures to bring to the council. I mean, I'm not going to say we're going to have full conceptuals. I'm told that we need 4 to 6 weeks for full conceptual. So if we can get the architect signed on within the next week or so, we can do the countdown from then.
Now, I'm talking about the temporary, right? When I say this is all about the temporary numbers. Okay, great.
It is. We need to get the architect on board with contracted.
Right, but a ballpark could be provided by the November meeting for the temporary, you believe?
I believe that we can do that, and that's our goal.
Great, thank you.
It's going to be tight.
Mayor and then Ed. Go ahead. Bloody thing.
The unmute. Okay, all I was going to say with regard to the architect's contract is it is currently with our lawyer. I did have an email exchange with him today. We should have it by Monday. Monday happens to be a holiday, but he and I are going to speak on Monday regardless. And if I have good news there, Dennis Ross and Neil Joyce will be the first to know about it. Okay,
great. All right, Ed Jarvis.
Yeah, just real quick, Dave. Thank you. I just wanted to ask Dave when we get some drawings. They were sent out to the temporary building committee. Can they be sent out to the full committee? So I would have liked to have viewed them before the meeting yesterday. That's all. That was my only thing on the temporary site. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. Neil can send them out, or I can send them out. I can send them out to the full crew, definitely.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Anybody else who's on the committee have any other comments? Anybody not on the committee have any comments or questions on this part of the agenda? I mean, to sum it up, it looks like they're moving along, and as long as I think my goal as the co-chair to knowing that we're moving towards a presentation, I'd like to be able to provide the city council with the ballpark that we're talking about so that they can understand the numbers completely. So if we're able to do that, I think we're doing okay now. Again, anybody else want to speak on this? Yes, Chief.
I just want to give an update. I meant to give it to the group yesterday, but unfortunately I disconnected the meeting as the wind event came through. So I apologize for that and any confusion with that. But I did want to report that Ed Jarvis, Herb Forgy, retired Captain Clark Seaman, and potentially one or two permanent guys will start the effort to start taking a look at all of our artifacts for them to be moved when we move out from the temporary.
Oh, that's right.
So Herb and Clark, they were able to go to the firehouse sometime this week, beginning of the week, and they did an inventory of what we have, and they have a good sense of what needs to be preserved inside versus outside. And so they will be working diligently to make sure that all the artifacts get appropriately stored someplace. So very happy that that group is stepping forward.
So if you believe that's part of the temporary because it's kind of the first step, then there's a question that I have. I think Chief, you may have posed it to me when we were talking earlier this week. We know that the library's budget does include a demolition component, but the demolition may not be a careful demolition like might be needed for some of the artifacts. So when we go forward on the temporary, we might want to just remember, David, that we may need an estimate. It would be nice if you could talk to maybe anybody on the library side that can give you an answer to what they perceive that budget item will include so that we can know whether we have to add more money to our budget. For example, to take I think the cupola is coming off. So that would be a careful process versus a
wrecking ball
hammer that would
wrecking ball process. Yeah.
wrecking ball that would, right. So might as well get that down now and make sure that we see that so it's not a number that jumps out at us later. Chief, would that make sense?
It does. The only thing that I think has an associated cost with would be the cupola. To get the cupola down and to take the cupola down in one piece.
Okay. Everything else is personal property or something that needs
Yeah,
to.
there are a couple poles that's not going to be that big of an issue to get out. The cornerstone, we've personally have taken the cornerstone out before ourselves, so that's not going to be a big issue. The rest of the artifacts are all portable, from the hand pumper to the hose cart, and so I don't envision us absorbing a cost other than if we were to pay for storage. So,
Okay.
and we're working out some ideas within the city to try to have it at zero cost.
Great. Zero is a good number.
David,
Yes.
I think Dennis Ross has his hand up for this discussion.
Hi, thank you, Dennis. Sorry.
Sorry, David. Chief, if we're gonna get the mural, my guess is if it's even possible, that will probably be more expensive than the cupola, and there should be money aside for it, if it's even possible.
David, Dennis, the way that the mural is in there, I don't believe it's going to be possible to try to salvage that. I think as a committee, as we get a year down the road or whatever, we may want to look at recreating it with a local artist and put a contest or something. Maybe give us some type of a canvas when you're designing the new building, but I don't know how that's going to come off. It's a bunch of pieces. And
Yeah. Fair enough. Thank you.
Then I would like to suggest that we definitely take pictures of it before the demolition, careful, detailed pictures of it, so that if it could be recreated by the same artist or another one, then better. Then we at least know what it was, because it's lovely, and I'd like to see it recreated as close as possible.
I'll work closely with Herb and Ed and the group on that and see what we have for alternatives. And if we have to come up with a budget, we will.
Okay.
Okay. Any other? Yes, Carol.
I was just going to add, I don't remember how it all wound up, but there was the mural on the, was it the Ford building that got taken down for the parking garage?
It wasn't
I
a
don't know if
mural, it
anyone was
was-
involved. I'm sorry?
It was, what do they call it? Frescoes or
A
something?
frieze. I think it was a
That
frieze.
took off the building. Yes, Mayor.
I can answer that.
Okay.
I think the answer is basically no. They were, because of the material that they were made with, when they tried to take them off, they basically crumbled, but they had enough, again, photographic evidence that they were recreated within the parking garage in some fashion, and I forget exactly where.
The outside.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't know if the same people, you know,
That's
had
right.
expertise in that.
They're right above the entrance, so,
Yep.
but those are recreations, they're not the actuals.
All right, so
Okay.
anything else from folks on the committee with respect to the temporary fire station? David, are there any action steps you need from this larger group for you to go forward?
I don't think so. I will contact the library committee and ask them for some details on the demolition and have that information by next meeting.
And when's your next meeting?
Our next meeting is, it's a little confusing. I might be a little confused about it. So with the extra fifth week. So the next meeting, I believe, this building committee meeting, the next meeting is the 23rd, correct? So ours would be the 19th.
Okay, thanks.
David,
Okay,
I just want to, Phil Elmer has a question in the chat box.
I can't see the chat box. I
It's,
guess I-
does the $1 million for the temporary include the communications center the chief mentioned last meeting?
Chief, I guess that's a question for you, or for you and David.
I don't remember talking about a communication center. What I talked about was the tower, the communication tower. Is maybe Councilor Elmo can elaborate a little bit.
All right,
That's what
I
the
didn't want to go outside of the group, but go ahead. Councilor Elmer, please, you're on. You have the floor.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but the chief mentioned a couple things that he'd forgotten to mention at the previous meeting, and I guess the tower was one of them. I just wanted to make sure that the money we're hearing about for the temporary includes all the things that the chief said he would need. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks for
Thanks.
the clarification. Yes, the simple answer is that we're evaluating what we're going to need for communication devices at both the temporary and the permanent.
Does that answer your question, Counselor?
And is that included in the $1 million figure, or is that in addition to that?
So are you addressing the figures that Neil had talked about earlier today with respect to the structures?
Yes.
Okay, so the structures, the price that we just talked about is just a very large ballpark estimate from the manufacturers and the folks that lease the buildings. Those prices had nothing to do with the systems inside the fire station, at the temporary fire station at this point in time. The figures he talked about were just leasing figures for the structures.
Thanks.
The big picture, I guess. Does that answer your question, Phil?
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions before I move to the next item on the agenda? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, David. I have your presentation by Neil and Dennis regarding cost of the project. Maybe that's unfair. I would broaden it to just giving us an update on things. It may be important because we're now looking to ask for an appropriation from the city council, and I know there are councilors listening. Might be a good time to restate some of the numbers for the project, excluding the temporary fire station, and anything new that you both know that can help us and the community. So I'll put it on Neil or Dennis to talk, please.
Go
Neil?
ahead, Neil, and I'll fill in where I need to.
Can Neil hear? Neil, you hear me?
Yep, there we go.
Okay.
Well, where are we? In terms of the permanent station, there has been no appreciable change in anticipated budget or costs since we shared our conceptual numbers with the committee last meeting. We're still looking at a permanent station somewhere in the range of $15 million and a temporary station somewhere in the range of 1.7 million. The temporary station numbers are starting to come into a little bit greater focus as we're gathering information from vendors and developing site plans to the effect that we can start talking about utility connections and whatnot. So those numbers are coming into a little better focus. And I know that Dennis and his team have put together some renderings and a preliminary site plan for a couple of different concepts for the new building. And I'll happily turn that over to Dennis and his team to walk through those sketches.
Okay, and then along with those, we had a request for a bit more breakdown in the permanent structure for how the square footage gets laid out. And we did a site plan and have some additional information on there, certainly more parking spaces. The chief was real helpful in talking about drive-through, and so we've updated that also, and it does show the square footages that the committee had requested.
Okay, is there anything that's available for that? Neil, you may have sent me something today. I don't think I got to it. Were that preliminary drawings for the fire station?
Yeah, we had sent those out this morning. We received them from Dennis's office. Again, just for anybody that missed it, his office was impacted by the storms yesterday as well. We got the sketches from Dennis and his team this morning. And David, yes, that was the package I had sent you this morning with the intention it would be shared with the committee if deemed appropriate.
All right. Well, I'm sorry, committee. I got it this morning. I was out today. I will certainly forward them to you for discussion in the future. So, and we might even share them with the counselors so they can see what's going on as well. Okay. Anything else that Neil and Dennis want to offer us for information? Oh, actually, I'm sorry, Dennis. Did you have something you wanted to say?
No, go ahead, please.
Neil, just again, just so we can all get really good at repetition is the person of learning. Maybe we can go again through the numbers to the $15 million. We have an estimate for $10 million, the hard cost for the fire station. Then we have what we've budgeted for the cost for acquisition and demolition on Main Street. And then we have the soft costs, which include you and the architect and other costs. And then we have the sort of the flex fund in case prices go up and we need a little extra money in overage, so we make sure we can pay everybody. Is that a fair representation of what the $15 million is about? Unmute, Neil, I'm sorry.
Yes, David, I'm sorry.
So that is, okay. Are there any questions from anyone on the committee wanting to go over any of those specific number?
David?
Yes, it looks like Ash, yes.
Oh, okay. So two things. Yes, Ashley, President Stemple is on the call and does have a question, I believe, but I just wanted to update people on since we're talking about permanent and temporary. I think that is the discussion right now. I only just today received the additional counter information to the purchase of the Main Street and Coombs Avenue. So I have it in hand. but I need to review it. My quick review of it, that it was missing one piece of critical information, which I've now alerted them to, and I should be able to get that by tomorrow. So certainly by the next meeting, I will have perhaps a little bit of an update on that. But just to know that I'm not, we are still in negotiations on that, and I don't have any new information to share until I have all the information to share.
Okay. President Stemple, please.
Hi, David, or Chair Singer. Thank you very much.
Hi, President.
So, and just to reiterate, Mr. Joyce, so you're saying the 15 million does include soft costs, hard costs, and the contingency?
That's what we're projecting, yes.
Okay. And then, so then we still have 1.7 million for a temporary fire station. And as of right now, what our first reading request is for an additional 5 million, which falls 1.7 million short of both a permanent and a temporary station. So will there be an additional request for the council? My preference is to not have an additional request. My preference is to have one request. So I was just kind of thinking towards the funding strategy there.
The mayor would like to answer that, then I'll follow up.
Oh, I didn't mean to truncate. The question was directed to Neil. I just wanted to say to President Stemple and other counselors, I have what I think is the answer to your questions ready to email to you. It just did not get done before this meeting started. So you will get it hopefully by the end of the evening. And if not, certainly by tomorrow morning. But I'll let Neil answer the question if I don't know if he remembers what the question was.
The question was, will there be a need to come back to the council for more money?
Yes, that was the question.
Other than the 15, other than the additional 5 is what you're saying. Is that right?
Because
yeah.
the math is for the 15, but then we're still missing the 1.7 in there somewhere if it needs to be allocated from the council.
Well, this is what I'd like to do, President Stemple. The next item on our agenda is to discuss the appropriation. I think I'd like to bring the entire group up to speed first before we answer that question. And maybe as we talk about it, you can learn more about what we're thinking. And then if you have that as a follow-up question afterwards, I'm certainly happy to let you talk. Does that work?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Neil and Dennis, are you done with making any new presentations? Are there any other questions of Neil or Dennis from the committee? Okay, I don't see any. I don't see all of you, and I don't see anything in the chat room. Okay, let's go on to the next.
No.
Peter had his hand up.
Peter MacGyver had his hand up.
I'm sorry, I don't. Am I supposed to see Peter? Maybe he's on the next page.
Well, yeah, you have to use your right arrow and go to the next page.
No, I don't see Pete. It would be. I don't know why people don't show themselves. But it would be helpful if you show yourself so I can see. All right, there's Peter. Okay, go ahead, Peter. I can't see you.
If I may, Chair Singer, it might be helpful for folks. You have so many folks on this call and you're never going to be able to see everybody. What we do at meetings is have folks request to speak in the chat box. I don't know if that's going to help you or not, but
that would help me immensely. So if you want to speak, please just tell me in the chat room that you want to speak. So Peter, I understand that you want to speak, so I cannot see you, but please go ahead.
I recognize that you weren't able to review the documents that Neil sent to you this morning. However, I wonder if it's appropriate that Neil and Dennis review that information.
Yeah.
Sure. But nobody has, so they'll have to review it without us having anything in front of us. Okay, that'd be fine. Neil, are you prepared to do that? Dennis, you prepared to do that?
Dennis, do you want to drive a presentation or do you want me to share?
If you've got them, again, I'm at home, so we're on kind of limited capacity here.
If someone can permit me to share my screen, I'll bring up the renderings. And Dennis, you can just respond to each rendering. I don't know what order they'll come up in.
That's fine.
So Chief Strahan can share the screen.
Have permission. Do you have the share button at the bottom of your screen?
Who are you talking to?
Neil.
There you go.
Okay. What we did, and I have to thank Adam for this, because he's been working long, hard hours. We did 3 separate schemes. This one would be one that the chief happened to alert us to some stations he had seen that have what we'll call curved roofs, which you can obviously see here. A more modern approach to this side of Main Street. Just because of the layout on the site and the fact that trying to put a cupola on a building like this would make no sense, we try to treat the corner as we present it to Main Street for the cupola, the antique, and give the station some kind of presence. There are solar panels on all of these, so you can see them across the bay, and then the section that would be more towards Main Street. We're not making any representations at this point for materials. We do believe that they'd probably be, a combination of some sort of masonry panels, whether those be metal panels, wood panels, composite panels. There are hundreds and hundreds of materials out there. What we meant is really just shapes and concepts of what might work on Main Street. And this would be one of the more modern ones. And what we can do is either question each one as you see it, or we can go back to it, or however the committee would like to proceed.
Why don't you, I can't see everybody. Chief, I see you.
Yeah, can I just make a comment on that one? One of the reasons why I had them take a look at that design is twofold. First of all, it's absolutely beautiful, the fire stations that I've seen that have that design. And the other part of it is it really captures the ability to capture a lot of natural light throughout the building, which I think is going to be nice working, especially during the daytime on the apparatus floor, having that natural light coming into the fire station quite a bit. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next one, which I think came up briefly. There we go. I'll call this one kind of halfway between traditional and modern. We'll call it quasi-modern, if you will. Again, a lot of light into the bay, a little bit more restricted on the rest of the building as punched openings or windows go. For this one, again, just showing the cupola out front as some sort of monument. And in all cases, and you'll see this when we get to the final plan drawing, if you will, a very general layout of how we think these spaces will work, meaning the bays in the rear, living in the middle section, and the front section being the more public areas. Again, same thing with the materials. They could be absolutely anything. This would be a far more traditional look for Greenfield. The front portion with the cupola on top definitely mimics the existing fire station, as do the sizes and types of windows. And in this one specifically, the materials, we're showing a combination of masonry at the bays with the lighter color being some sort of siding, again, whether it's metal, composite, wood, we don't know. And you can see the solar panels kind of poking up over the bays. So those are the 3 concepts, and believe me, there's other concepts that can be put out there, but we wanted to give the committees and the council, traditional, kind of quasi-modern, and then more modern. And it's your city. You're going to be living with a station for many, many years, and it really needs to be your decision. And we can do these as much as you need to make that decision happen. This plan, if you will, is pretty close to the plans you've seen before. The difference here is we've divided up the sections. You can see the blue at the top, which is your more public and office spaces. The middle section, the green, is living, again with some offices, admin offices. The yellow is still what we call support and mezzanine, which supports the bays directly. And then the bays now have all the equipment that the chief gave us actually set in there, so we know it works. And the chief had talked to us about restricting the number of actually drive-through bays he needs. And by doing that, we were able to locate dumpsters and generators away from the neighbors and gain a heck of a lot more parking. And you can see with the square footages, which are taken from the original program, we're just going to round it out. It's a 20,000 foot building, so there's considerable savings involved. Sorry about that. My house phone going off. I apologize. So if there's any questions on any of this, we'd be happy to answer them. I know you're seeing this for the first time, so it's a little difficult. But if anyone does have questions, please.
Mayor, also, please, if you want to ask a question, go on chat. I cannot see any, I can only see 5 people, so thank you. But I can see the mayor. Yes, Mayor.
Okay, all I was going to say to everybody on the call, and these are wonderful, Dennis. Thank you so much. I love the 3 options. We're in, okay, Adam, yes, thank you. We're in early stages, so that's one thing. And also, we are still in negotiations on the site. So just needing to let people understand that.
Okay, thank you. Steve.
Yes, I like it, and I want to also just say that these are very, very early. I have had similar experiences with trying to put a cupola on a modern building, and it doesn't really work. I have 2 things I want to say about the cupola. First of all, has anybody been up there to take a look at it? When I tried to take some cupolas off of Mercy and we got up there with a ladder, the thing was in very, very poor shape. Secondly, we elected to do, I think, with the cupola, what you sort of show in the second option, which is divorce it from the building. That's the one, and you make a little, public, statement about it as a little, queuing place. In my case, it was going to be in a memorial garden, but that way it's so I like the cupola. My personal opinion, I like scheme 1 with the cupola on the ground. So my 2 cents for the moment right now.
Thank you. Anybody else at this point?
David, if I could.
Sure, thank you, Chief.
If everybody gets an opportunity, if they would Google Fort Washington, Pennsylvania fire station, that is one of the conceptual designs that we designed the first one off of, or that I thought was a really sharp looking firehouse. So if you want to see what it looks like, that type of design in real life.
And Dennis and Neil, for the purposes of the president of the council and other councilors, these renderings are considering the budget of $10 million. Is that correct?
To the extent that they could be, yes. Meaning that's why the materials are fungible and definitely 20,000 feet, not more. So yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate.
So these are 20,000 square foot fire stations, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
I'm seeing that Karen Pacheco stated that I assume she's saying that is Fort Washington right there.
Oh, great.
Is that correct? Karen?
Mayor, I was referring to the reference that the chief was making as the basis of this design is Fort Washington. I just wanted to make sure people knew it was an F, not a P for
Yes.
Fort Washington. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Anybody
Yeah,
else?
If anybody has any trouble, we can also gather some pictures and send them along too. So, anybody needing photos, if just, let us know and we can send them out too.
Okay. I'm going to share what I got with the committee anyway. From Carol. Oh, thank you, Carol. Thank you, Adam. The age of technology. It's beautiful. Beautiful thing. How did we ever do it before? Okay, anything else in this part of the meeting? Going once, going twice. Okay, I can't see anything else. Thank you, both of you. Thank you, Dennis, and your group for what you've done. All right, next on the agenda is the funding and the presentation to the City Council. I don't know whether I should begin or the mayor should begin, or Mayor, do you trust me to begin?
Of course.
All right, I'm going to speak from my own knowledge, which may not be complete, so I'm happy to have others weigh in, but based on my knowledge, this is what I think. It does look like we need that the project could cost $16.7 million to get through it, including the temporary fire station. Let's round it up to 17 million. So it's my understanding from what Liz has presented to the council and to us. And so, okay, so the budget's 17 million. We have 10 million appropriated. We need extra money. So the maximum would be 7 million to move ahead without coming back to the city council, hypothetically. Liz indicated to us all, and I'm only putting my understanding into words, not her words, into the discussion, that if we were to ask for $5 million at this time, that would not, besides the obvious, it would not be an onerous request because the town could absorb that type of an appropriation for several reasons, one of which I understood to be that with other debts coming offline and the way that we want to keep our debt between $6 and $8 million at any time, is that the right number? Excuse me, 6 to 8% at any time. That asking for $5 million would not cause an audit. It would not cause a disturbance in the force. But if we ask for more than that, then she would have to look at this more closely. It could trigger an audit. There are other things that are more complicated that can occur. So having the sensitivity about that being the case, and also wanting to answer President Stempel's question and her desire, I'm trying to balance that, what you desire, President Stempel, and what I believe to be the need now and how we can get from here to there, which is that I would like to recommend, and I want to open this up for discussion, that we ask, as the mayor has, for an appropriation of $5 million, which will take us through all the costs of the permanent fire station, and that we look at the entirety of the two projects as a $25 million project, $10 million appropriated for the library and $15 million appropriated for the fire station. It's my understanding that there's a number of things that could help pay for the extra $1.7 million. There can be grants. There can be different levels of funding. There could be leasing the equipment, which won't be borrowing. It will be spending through the general fund. I know that the Library Foundation has spoken about taking the monies that they're getting and offsetting the costs of their library. So if they get anywhere between $1 and $2 million, the offset would mean that their portion from the town would go from 10 million to 9 million to 8 million. And therefore, that extra money, if the 25 million is what we're budgeted, could be at the end of the project, go back into the project to help fill in any gaps. I want to also say, and again, I'm speaking ahead of the committee, so of course I want everybody to weigh in, but from my experience on the city council, that this way, the 15 million is a safe request. If you're willing to appropriate it, then we work like heck to make sure that everything comes in budget, and we see where we could save money, because of course, if we go ahead sooner than later, that will be a savings. If the library goes ahead sooner than later, that will be a savings. And yes, if at the end of the day, we need an extra $500,000 or $1 million from the city council, that may be something that we have to come back and ask for, but that won't be until we know where we stand, which would be in a couple of years, which would change how, the dynamics of borrowing would be presented to the city. I'm not hoping that we do that. I'm hoping that from then, that 1.7 million will be absorbed in what I'm talking about. So that's how I view it. And that's why I think it's better for us to ask for an appropriation of 5 million at this point, rather than an appropriation of 7 million. But that's just my way of beginning the conversation. So I will stop, and I'll let the mayor speak.
I think that's largely correct, David. I just want people to understand, because the temporary comes first, we have to spend that money first. But I hesitate to say it this way, but it all works out in the end. So we are budgeting right now to $15 million. We know that there will be possibility of additional money needed beyond the 15. And so we will say that money, we will find other ways to get it. Whether it's money coming off of debt or whatever, grants, many other different opportunities that my office is exploring. So it'll be some offsets, some potential grants, and so forth. But right now we're budgeting for the 15 million, or designing and budgeting for the 15 million.
All right, who wants to talk? Butch.
I tried to chat. I couldn't make it work here. I just wanted to say that I support David's approach to the funding piece, and not getting too mixed up and too diversified in the way we're trying to approach it with city council. I think there are a lot of ways down the road for us to make up that difference. And I think the 15 million is really the stretch for the city, and we should maybe just stick to that and work hard at getting that, and then work hard at offsetting those other costs as time goes on. So I really support that approach. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Chief, would you like to weigh in at this point?
I'd like to hear what the rest of the committee has to say first.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. All right, nobody else wants to say anything? Jen?
It looks like Jen and or Ed or
Jean
Jean.
and Ed. Those were the hands that I saw.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the approach that you laid out, David, and I feel like, one of the things that's hard is we're in a conversation where this process is being criticized because there was an original 10 million that at the time I think was understood not to be sufficient, but that was a reasonable commitment to this project. And I think that there is that risk that having to go back again after 5 will cause some scrutiny, but I think it's worth it, because I think that we're proceeding, it's like if you throw the money out there, you're more likely to spend it, right? We're proceeding with an abundance of caution and looking for all different ways to save money, to find different avenues for funding. But there's also this piece of, we just have to be really committed to going for the funding we need, because I really care about the operating costs of this building. And so I feel that at no point should, we all need to be kind of courageous and ready to say what we need to spend to get the kind of building that's going to not only be great for the people who work there and who serve us, but that also, frankly, isn't penny wise and pound foolish sort of down the road in terms of operating costs and durability. So.
Thank you. Is that it? Okay. Jean Wall.
I just wondered where the purchase price for Coombs comes in on this figuring that we've got.
It's budgeted at $900,000 plus there's another 200. I could be wrong. I don't have the numbers in front of me. So Neil, if I'm wrong, let me know. And another 250,000 for demolition and site preparation.
That was our budget. That's correct.
But we're not in, we've got 1.7 for the temporary, we've got 15 for the station, and we're not talking about Coombs.
Yes, we are. It's included in the 15. Does that help you? I don't mean to be argumentative, but it is included. The 15 includes 900,000 plus 250,000.
Okay, that's
Yes,
all.
that's correct. That is correct.
Where's Ed?
I'm right here.
Where'd you go?
Crazy. Anyways, yeah, Dave, I have to agree with you. I want to urge any city councilors that are on the listening in tonight that it makes sense to fund it at 15 million. It gives the city and everybody working towards that goal and towards achieving that goal and finding other sources for the other extra money that may have to come up. I mean, I think it's a reasonable budget. I think it's a doable budget. And at the end of the day, 2.5 years from now, if we have to appropriate a little bit more, then we know that everybody did their due diligence to work within that budget that was appropriated. I think it makes sense to approach it that way.
Thank you, Ed. Yeah, Steve?
So, I mean, just to be clear, what we're talking about is a $13,300,000 fire station. That's what we're talking about, because the 1.7 is part of that 15 million. So the budget for the new fire station is 13,300,000, correct?
Yes, but I don't think anybody's saying that we may not need extra money. It's where that extra money will come from. But go ahead, Mayor.
You may be correct, Steve, but the plan is we're going into this understanding that we're designing to 15 million, and at some point, yes, we will need some additional funding. We are not saying to the council at this point that we need to come back to them again for additional funding. We have other ways of getting that. So I don't want anybody on the call to think that we would never come back to the council. That I don't believe at this point that that's exactly what we're saying. But what we're saying is with the 15 million, we can begin working. We can get closer to the correct amount. And if we need additional funding, we will seek all other means of getting that additional funding other than coming back to the council.
Does anybody else want to? Who's that? Chris? Herb, sorry.
And Peter MacGyver as well. Peter MacGyver as well.
Sorry, I saw Herb first, but I will go Peter next. Go ahead, Herb.
No, thanks, David. My question would be, if we use that $15 million and then we are able to pick up grants, would those grants be in addition to 15 million, or would we be giving money back to the city of Greenfield? Because I'm still having some problems getting my head around the fact that we're going to build a library for $5 million more than it's going to cost us to build a fire station. Thanks.
It's 4.5 million, actually.
Okay, I'll take that.
But
Uh,
no one's counting now.
oh, who else? Somebody else wanted to. Was there someone else I wanted to speak that I missed? Oh, Peter, sorry.
Peter.
Yeah, I was just curious. I know that some of the counselors have been on in the last couple meetings, but I was wondering if it would be appropriate for the mayor to kind of go over some of those conversations that we've had about the additional revenue streams, be it community block grant or state funds or whatever. Just if we could review that for those that are listening today.
I can do that, Chair Singer, in a, I don't, yes, I can do that. I can do that with not a great deal of certainty. I can only tell you where we are pursuing those, where we're pursuing those avenues. If you want me to continue.
Yeah, please do. I'm sorry. Yes.
Oh, okay. So we have the opportunity now, we have finally gotten the okay from DHCD to consider some CDBG money going towards this. We're not clear yet as to at what point in the process we would actually be able to utilize that money, but it would be coming out of the 2022 CDBG funding round. And the way we're being able to do this, well, I won't go there, but there would, for reasons that we are still in negotiation on that property, but we have the ability to potentially do that. It will come later in the funding stream, which is actually the appropriate time for it. So only because of it has to come from 22, CDBG 22, and which has a timeline of its own that begins a little later in 21. And we also have the opportunity to work with the USDA. Wait a minute, the Agricultural Department, whatever they call themselves. Yeah, USDA on guaranteed loans as a possibility. And then we always have the possibility of offsetting the cost based on our debt schedule. So I think David very early on referred to the possibility that through the library, we will be able to offset the amount of borrowing that is needed on either or both of the projects. And I think that pretty well covers it right now. I'm still looking for tricks in the bag, but those are the three that I have available to me right now.
Silence.
I was just
Anyone
gonna say,
else?
that's it, I'm done.
Carol?
These are relatively small amounts, but I just wanted to bring up that this building should also be eligible for incentives from the utilities that I'll work on. For the library, we're looking at roughly $64,000. So I would think we would be in the ballpark for the fire station. The other thing I wanted to bring up for Dennis is that we do have a limitation of 50 kilowatts for the solar arrays in the downtown area. It may be different at that site, but that's what we're limited to at the library and other downtown sites that I've looked into. So, and I very much appreciate that they're on all three of the schematics. Thank you so much. And I love them all. They're beautiful. Thank you. And I didn't know that Chief Strahan had the modern flair in him, but I appreciate it very much. So those are two
He's
other.
a modern guy at heart.
I know. Very impressed.
Are there any other members of the group that are working the fire department system besides the chief, who I think wants to speak last, that want to comment on this? You know, we're citizens that came on this committee to try to help you, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to move through the political system in a way that's transparent and lets everybody know what we're up to. And I've tried to feel the heartbeat and the pulse of the firefighters, but I know that some of you may be on this that might want to speak. So if somebody wants to speak up now, that would be great. Okay, I would assume that means that people are okay with what's happening. Chief, would you like to speak before or
No,
after?
I would like to speak, and I just basically have a question more
Yeah.
than a comment. And my question is, if City Council approves the $5 million, which I'm hoping that they will, but if they approve the $5 million, the next day we start the design phase, what cost are we designing to?
For the fire station itself?
Yeah.
I guess that's a good question. I assumed, and maybe an assumption was not fair, but I assumed it was a 10,000 square foot fire station. And office.
20,000, but
I'm
my
sorry.
but my understanding with when we go out to bid for the project, we have to know what the budget is, and we build by what the budget is in hand. So are we leaving out, say, escalation costs? Are we leaving out soft costs? Or what are we leaving out to get us to the 15 million? It's just a question. I'm not sure the answer to that.
Maybe I'm on fantasy island, but the way I look at it is, again, that the costs the savings that we'll get will be as we get through the project. And the library, in other words, if the library and the fire station are together in this, and I'm looking at the overarching, I'm really looking at projects together thinking, number one, it's worth everybody's interest to start as soon as possible to save costs. So that's savings. We have been given a commitment from the Library Foundation that they're making it a public record that the funds that they get through will help offset the costs, which they now know will help the library, because obviously without the fire station, we can't have the library. And so we're within what I perceive as a $25 million budget if all that were to happen. So either we save money by really saving money and we don't need to go back, or we make it clear to the city council that we may need to come back, and we just say it up front that's the way that we're going to present it. That's my way of thinking about it. I'm only one, so
Yeah,
I will let others.
I have no doubt that we are going to be successful in getting grants to offset this project. I think there's tremendous opportunities out there, and especially as we go forward with this project, I think that that's going to happen. My question, though, is from just the design part of it. We have to design from the cost that we know, and if it's 15 for everything, then I don't know how that plays out from a legal standpoint, from a procurement standpoint. That's my only question.
David, Dennis Ross has his hand up.
I know, but somebody called me and I went out. So yes, there you go. Thank you. Yes, Dennis.
Chief, that's a really good question, and it's one that cannot be answered in this committee today, but it will be answered as we move forward as to how we peg that budget. We have some tricks up our sleeves with Neil for things like alternates, allowances, unit costs that we can work in or out of the bids to help, adjust that number. But at some point, and whatever that point's going to be, probably a good year from now, we're going to have an actual budget. We're going to have a true estimate, and we're going to have a building that equals XYZ number of dollars. What it won't do is compromise your operations or response. What it may do is maybe the museum's a little less, or some such thing like that. I can't tell you right now. But what it won't do is compromise your operations, right? whatever the budget is. Not really an answer, but it's the answer we have right now.
President Stemple, do you want to re-enter the meeting and see if we've either answered your question or now you want to ask some questions that you wanted to ask before?
I think you answered it, Chair Singer, when we first opened this segment, and I think it's been a back and forth of is the excuse me, is the fire station and are the library projects separate or together? And whichever way you think about it, they're both allocations of money. And and so thinking about it as a $25 million project, with, we'll say, the hope that there will be additional funding from outside sources, I think that sounds wonderful. I guess my question would be, and I can't, I'm not going to pretend to be the expert here, but to Mr. Joyce, the cost of resources for building anything are skyrocketing astronomically. And so I'm curious if that's been considered in the budget as well. And if the contingency can sustain the costs rising for what it takes to build a building. I mean, I'm sure it's probably a silly question because you do this stuff all the time. But I think my concern is we won't break ground until 2 years out, or is it 1 year out? By then, the cost that we're estimating for this fire station could be blown out of the water. So while the funding allocation and strategy sounds fine to me, I'm still worried about when we're breaking ground and what things are going to cost then.
Neil?
So when we ran the cost numbers for the building, we did include escalation out to January of 22, which is roughly halfway through our construction process. Again, the numbers that we're dealing with now are very, they're based on square footage. There isn't a lot of science to it. It's just based on past experience and sort of everyone's guessing what the future holds. Given where we are now and where we've been over the last 6 months, it's really impossible to say when we're going to emerge from the current situations and the current restraints and what effects that will have on the supply chain and the markets. But all I can say is everybody's in the same position as we are. The library is, the fire station is. And to your second question, I think our anticipated bid date was early summer of next year. And Dennis, you can chime in on that if you choose.
No, I think that's fairly accurate. So we're sticking with it.
Okay, and just as an aside, Peter Lane, I do see your request to speak. I see you in who you represent. I'm going to ask if you'd please submit your questions in writing. Thank you. But thank you for attending the meeting. I'm not going to give you a chance to speak. It's not open to the general public. Anybody else on the committee have any, well, Councilors, President Stemple, again, I want you and the other councilors to both be satisfied and to ask us questions as soon as possible about what we can do to better clarify what's going on. So at this point, we may have given you all we can, but if there's anything else you want to add to let us know what we can do to help you and the rest of the council, please use this opportunity.
I feel like a little bit of a broken record. It's really important for me to ensure that obviously the council, because we're the ones appropriating the money, but the ones paying the money are residents. And so it's really important for me that we are making, so if we're designing to a $15 million building, and that includes soft, hard, as well as contingency costs, there are milestones built in there And so it's really important for me that our residents understand. I see so many folks on the line, and I appreciate you attending the call and learning, but there's so many other residents that aren't. And I'm curious myself to see, and this would be for Mr. Joyce, to see the milestones of each soft cost milestone, hard cost milestones, and then anticipated amounts for contingency, based with even a rough cost, even if it's to the 100,000 mark of what everything has cost and what we've spent thus far. Because I've had many residents and many counselors asking me for that so they can follow the progress of the project. And if we think about the both projects as one project, maybe that is a call for both the library juxtaposed against the fire station. So that $25 million project is in a visual format. I understand that there's no accurate, specific numbers at this moment in time, but I want to believe that with your experience, you can probably make an estimate with a caveat that this has the right to change in the future. But I think something like that would really be helpful to counselors who are making this decision and understanding where the money has been spent and where it will be allocated in the future, as well as for those residents who are concerned about the future of both of these projects and where we're spending our money.
Okay, yes, Mayor.
Well, once again, I just wanted to say that she's addressed the question to both. I see that Penny also wants to speak, Penny Ricketts, Councilor Ricketts, at some point here after Neil. She's addressed the question to Neil, and I will let him answer it. But I just once again want to say to counselors on the call, I will send you that information. I hope it is what you want, but I'll reiterate again, and I think Neil will too. These are estimates at this point. We are not at the same place that the library is. They were there quite some time ago. So we are not able to give you specific costs at every step of the way because we simply have not gone out to bid. Those costs could come down, which would be wonderful. And you're right, Councilor and President Stemple, to say that some months out, things could change. They generally do in the construction business. That's why no one who does these kinds of projects ever really has the accurate amount right up front. We are doing this, as we all know, on a shoestring. So that's why I think we say, to the best of our abilities, we are designing to the 15 million. If it's really 16 to 17, which I think is entirely possible, we will find other avenues for making that up until the point at which we cannot.
Okay. Councilor Ricketts.
Yes, okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
So let me be frank and let me get my head together about this. So first of all, as a counselor, I'm thinking about this as 3 projects. I'm thinking about the library, the temporary fire station, and the permanent fire station. I was trying to listen last night and I got booted out of the meeting. So I'm not quite sure how financially the temporary is coming along. And I am getting lots of calls from people in the community. And my thinking is, and many of theirs also, is that it's not that we want a fire station, we need a fire station. And so this year alone, we've had to deal with the pandemic, and then look what we dealt with in the last 24 hours with that storm we just had. So it's really important. And if I had to put my eggs in all one basket, I want to do what's right, but I want to understand it. I don't feel comfortable thinking that right now, 15 million and we're not going to need more. I don't know what the temporary is going to be, but I feel like this community is going to want a better dollar figure for the temporary and the permanent. Put it together and let's work off that big number, because then it's no surprises later. My biggest fear is we're going to build the temporary and something's going to happen, whether it's citizens or we pull back financially for some reason, and our firefighters end up in the temporary and we don't move forward for some reason. And I absolutely don't want that to happen. As a daughter of a firefighter for 57 years, I'm invested in seeing this project through, and I just don't want to be half stepping it. So right now, I'm going to be honest and just say I'm just not comfortable. The numbers are just too unknown. I want to vote for this, but I'm just I'm voting for holes in the ground. A hole in the ground on Hope Street, one down the street in open air market, and then we have the library going on. I just have to feel credible. I have to feel strong about what I'm doing, and I have to be reassured that we're going all the way. We're not going to stop. The temporary is not going to end up being something that scares the city so much. They're like, no more spending. We have to stop this now. We're in a pandemic. There's too many businesses that are failing that are not going to open back up. They're not going to get back to where they were at this time last year. It's so bad. I would never want to give this library grant back, but so much has happened from the time I voted for this. So here I am owning that I voted for this library and owning that grant and everything that was promised was all a good deal. And I'm taking it on my shoulders. But now I'm got to live with it and live with the pandemic, live with things like the storm that happened yesterday, and knowing maybe our DPW was on overtime too. And this is a small, poor community. And for me, I'm sorry, I'm not in a rush to vote for the 5 million unless we can say absolutely yes to a certain amount of money for the temporary. And we know a drop dead date that it can start. So the library will have their date when it can start. We can tell the library commission and they can say, that's not going to work for us. Forget it. We have to pull the grant, or yes, that'll work for us. And we move forward. But I'm sorry, it's a domino effect to me, and it's all going to matter. But we can't cut the fire department short at the end of the day. It's just too important. This year proved just how important public safety is. And not that the library is not as important, but we're talking lives here. We're talking property destruction. So I'm going to listen. You see me at every meeting, no matter what. I'm going to keep listening. So please encourage me, and not by a million phone calls, but I mean, just keep talking. I'm writing down everything you're saying. I'm writing down the numbers. You just have to assure me that we're going to get there and it's not going to be bad. Right now, I just feel like it is. I'm so sorry. But carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. You have been heard.
Thanks.
Councilor Forgy?
Thank you. I'm going to echo everything that was said by our council president and by Councilor Ricketts. We are concerned about the money issue, and it's important that we know as close to possible exact costs. So perhaps a strategy here is to go back and take a look at all the little pieces I've been hearing weaving in and out of this conversation about, well, we might need this, we might need that. I would rather have people come out and say, this is the absolute top number that we're looking at. And I would like to know the detail, the breakdown. This is for this particular piece. These are soft costs. These are overruns. These are this, these are that. If you have to present it in its entirety. If it has to be 17 million or 20 million or whatever that number ends up being, present it to council and let council deliberate that number in conjunction with all the other players to get to a number where everybody's feeling more comfortable. That's just a strategy that I'd like to throw out there. I have also been hearing from people in the community. I hope all of you have been hearing too, but there are a lot of individual citizens that are very concerned about the cost. If you talk amongst yourselves and you're all on board with the same thing, you're all going to get the same positive feedback. But I think it's really important to consider the citizens and the taxpayers. And so I hope when people contact any of you on these boards that you will please have a conversation with them so at least they'll understand, like I have understanding all of the things that I've heard today. So thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it. The 4G household has like a twofer, we can just switch the seat and Herb can come back in. So, okay. Thank you very much.
Does anybody else want to speak? I mean, my personal reply, and I think I'm speaking for the committee, is that we're grateful that you counselors came to this meeting. One of the reasons I put this on the agenda was to put out into the open what we were thinking and to get feedback from you. And we will do what you need for us to do in order to bring this before you so that you are able to intelligently determine and analyze what we're requesting and why it's the right request. Do you, just as I can't see a show of hands. I guess at this point, then, we won't make a motion to do anything specific. We'll just continue on our way to try to gather as much information as possible. And I guess the question, or the question is, if at this point, at the next council meeting, you're going to make a first reading for $5 million, but as Councillor Forgy said, maybe, and Councillor Stemple and Councillor Ricketts said, maybe we should make our best and our total request, and then have the discussion so that you all can decide how you want to best deal with it. And that's something that we have to think about mighty quick, because as I understand it, the request right now is the first reading will be for 5 million, not for 7 million, for example. So I don't know exactly, Mayor, maybe you can help, or I don't know if President Stemple is still there. My memory is that, in order to get before you in November with a real request, the first reading in October needs to be the right number. Yes, Mayor.
Okay, I'm just letting you know that prior to me, Peter MacGyver wanted to say something, so I'm happy to have Peter. I'm happy to have Peter precede me, and then I can.
Thank you. Go ahead, Peter.
Speak.
Peter.
My spacebar wasn't working on mute. I had a procedural question for, I guess, maybe the president of the council, or maybe the mayor or Liz. It sounded as though from those who spoke from the council that they would prefer to have a more fuller picture of the total budget and then potentially make adjustments financially on their end as to what they were willing to approve. Is our financial orders for spending, I've only ever seen them cut in the life of my career. So I'm curious as to whether or not, if we presented a request for 15 million, but the council took into consideration the additional costs that we have not budgeted for in that 15 million figure, if they could then adjust that figure higher. And I believe it's no, because I've never seen it done, but I just figured I'd throw it out there as a question.
I think in a very rosy glass world, legislative bodies would add money to appropriations. But in all seriousness, it sounds like there won't be concrete data to show to the council in order for us to make that distinction if the 2 additional will be of use or not. So I'd like to reframe that as, if this body believes that the 5 is inadequate and that there's a chance that they'll need more, I like to use the community center as an example. We came in under budget, and so we were able to rescind some of the money that we budgeted for that project. So to Councilor Ricketts' point, asking for the full need and then getting grant money to support it thereafter, so we're able to rescind that request, to me seems like the best strategy, but it's up to, in my opinion, this body to decide what that figure is.
Understood. Yes, Mayor.
I just simply want to remind everybody on the call, counselors and people in the public, it sounds like we're getting into a territory where if Director Gilman is still on the call, she may be able to enlighten us. But I think we have made it clear from the get-go that 5 million is what we can bond for adequately within our financial policies on bonding. Recognizing that it may be actually a $17 million project. So I think the questions that keep coming up are, how do we make up the difference between the 15 and the 2 if we need to? And we simply don't know that. I mean, we are wherever we're at on the library project, and right now they feel that they are reasonably under budget. That is, they are many months into their project, and we simply are not many months into our project. So I just want everyone to keep that into perspective. We would love nothing more than to give you the right numbers at every step of the way. But we find ourselves in this position of having to come to you knowing that we need additional money. That's not your fault. That's not my fault. It is where we're at. So we know that the additional 5 million will go a long way. We hope as we are able to go through those processes that those numbers become sharper. And I think Dennis alluded to that earlier, that we know that they will, as we go through this process, they will become sharper. We will then be able to say, we are minus this amount of money. The sooner we begin to work on this project with the full 15 million, the better, because the sooner we can begin to get those prices into sharper focus. So I'm just letting people know that. If Dennis and Neil have additions to that, I think it's appropriate for them to be able to speak at this time.
Mayor, if I could, I think one thing I would try to remind everybody is, although we've narrowed our selections to the possibility of 1 or more sites in Greenfield, we still have not yet picked a site that we're going to put this building. We've drawn some nice renderings, and we've given the council and this committee a taste of what, at least from a creative standpoint, what direction we're heading, and try to get some early readings from the committee as to whether they prefer a more modern flair. But again, just to reiterate, we have not yet picked a site, and that is probably the biggest risk factor in any building, is actually getting out of the ground. So I'd just like to remind everybody and leave them with that thought. We're doing the best that we can with the information that we know, but until we start to define some of those parameters a little tighter, we are not going to be able to discuss with any certainty total costs or breakdowns.
Okay. President Stemple, you still on?
Yep.
So I'm going to talk about procedure from my own experience. Mayor, I'm not trying to, please yell stop if I'm usurping my authority.
You're the chair.
Yeah, but I'm beginning to think that, there's the what people are thinking about listening to the amounts that are being requested, and then there's our understanding of what we've shared with each other tonight. It sounds to me like, for purposes of beginning the appropriate discussion with the city council, as an example, it might behoove us, and Mayor, I'm asking you to do this, think of this as well, to ask for an additional appropriation of $7 million so that it gets the first reading in October. And at least it's on the table, as that's the maximum request that we would ask for, or 6.7 or whatever it is. And then at the council level, when we finally get before you, or we come before Ways and Means, then we talk about the fact that we think, maybe the appropriation should be less because of things that Liz might say are important to consider. I just don't want to get to November and find out that you as a council, if you're asking us to go to, if the majority of the councilors will not vote unless they hear the full number or presented the full number, I don't think you can go above the reading. I don't think you can go above the first reading. We might want to find
That's
that
correct.
out. So I'm just wondering if strategically, as long as the community understands that every step of the way is just a way of bookmarking, and moving one step closer to a finer and finer discussion, it might be appropriate to make that, maybe we should change that request just for the first reading. And then between now and November, or if it's got to move in further past, at least we're in there with the number that we think is the highest number. And then when we say to you, well, we don't need this, we don't need that right now, that would be better for you. You'd appropriate less if you so choose. But I'm just wondering, and I'm saying it out loud here instead of it having be a call after the meeting, because we have the whole committee here, and I'd like to,
Director Gilman is ready to speak whenever you finish.
whenever I shut up.
I
So
didn't say that.
I would like for members of the committee to speak up now if they don't think that's a good idea, or if they have other ideas, because I want us to be all included in this decision. I don't want it to be just oh yeah, after the meeting, we decided to do it. So that's why I'm bringing it up. But Liz, please, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to confirm what Peter McIver had asked about increasing a financial order, and you cannot. At this point, whether we can amend the first one on the reading, I'm gonna have to double check. I have a feeling no, but I will. The other thing is, the problem is, when you do the 7 million, you're doing borrowing authorization. It does push us up and could possibly trigger a ratings agency review. And so why we realize we're going to need close to 2 million possibly, we're saying it can't be from borrowing, but we're saying there will be other sources. And I actually do really like David Singer's representation of the projects together, because another aspect is, if the library does raise the 2 million and they're committing to reducing that debt, if you view this all as one, you're shifting that 2 million, which is very close to the temporary costs, to the fire station. So, you know, it's just really hard. And there's a lot of different possible funding sources for that 2 million. 1.7, I'm again rounding it up as done before. So, and you know, I really do feel at our last presentation on this, we did present the full cost. You know, we did on everything. And broke it down to the type of the cost. You know, I can find out if we can amend that up or what our options are, but it's really a questionable move. And yet I know that if we weren't in the situation we're in and the library didn't have to proceed, yeah, we could wait and we could get all these firm costs, but we're not in that position.
Okay, thank you. Penny?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to remind this board also that this is only a very small fraction of our council. It may be better than you think. I mean, I'm only speaking for myself. I haven't sat down and met or called other counselors and asked them like, hey, how are you voting? It's only me listening to the meetings and trying to figure it out. And I have to be honest, even tonight, the two things that totally freaked me out and make me feel even worse about this was, first of all, the legal person from Dyer Investment having meetings and wanting to speak, and knowing that we haven't really chosen a site. And so the one thing that's definite is the money that you need, but we don't have the rest. So I just don't want to feel foolish voting for something and not knowing other pieces of it. And it's the more I listen, the more leery I feel. And I just, it's bothering me. And so I do think that we did get lots of figures and a lot of things are coming at us. I think it's just because it's not one specific place. We know this is where it's going to be built and that's it. I think it's so up in the air and we just don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what it's going to be to purchase certain land and this and that. So, I mean, I think it's a tough decision, but don't take it all to heart because I spoke tonight or Council Stemple or 4G. There's 13 people and they may be totally opposite of what I'm saying. So,
All right. I think what your insights have been excellent and we appreciate them. Councilor 4G.
Could I speak, David?
What's that?
Please. It's the mayor.
I'm sorry?
It is the mayor.
Oh, you keep, yes.
Could I speak first, please? Just
Yeah, I can't
count-
see you, so, and you're not on the chat board, so I can't see you.
okay.
If you want to keep your
That's all right.
picture, if you want to keep your picture up and raise your hand, I can see you.
My picture's
Go
been
ahead.
up. My
Of course.
picture's up all along, but anyway, it doesn't matter. I just want to reiterate that the money that we're dealing with now includes the cost, the top cost of the acquisition of the property at Main and Coombs. That's all. Everybody needs to understand that that is the top cost. It's not that we haven't chosen a site. We are in negotiations with that. It is behooves us all for us to not talk a great deal more other than that, but just to understand that when you're looking at these figures, that is the amount. Nobody's asking for more. Nobody's asking at this point. So those are the numbers. Those are accurate numbers that you're looking at. They're not inaccurate. There's nothing inaccurate about the numbers that the city of Greenfield is going to be giving you. They are not just simply not to the penny for every step of the way.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Chris?
My question's directed to Liz. Liz, when we go ahead and we are voting our capital budget at our annual town meeting or city meeting, we always identify the capital request and we associate it with whether it's going to be a borrowing or a grant or whatever. So my question is, if you are now identifying a high number for all of this, 5 million of this comes from borrowing, and say 17 million and the 5 million comes from borrowing, could the 2 million $7 million request come to council with 2 million saying from grants, from debt pay down, from
Yes, but we don't have the grants in hand, so you can't. It's hard.
Okay, because I was just thinking that if the more transparent we can all be here to give so we don't have to keep going back and changing orders and doing all of these different things, but a lot. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
No, I just want to give you a difference. When you had the library authorization, you had the grant in hand.
Okay.
And so, if you get a call from a ratings review, oh yes, but we have this grant in hand, and we don't at this point. But it's really, we're just up against a time clock. We could, as I said before, if we could take our time and just do the fire station as we go and get those costs for you, but we have the library on the other side under a time crunch.
Right. But isn't there something that we always talk about where we authorize the mayor to seek any grants, any this, any that, any available funds from any other sources?
Correct.
Can't that be added to this money request to the council?
It is, but it doesn't take away the fact that you don't have the grants and you're asking for another 2 million that you can't show that you have the grants for. So in other words, again, if this triggers a rating review, which we spoke with our financial advisor when we were talking about the 5 million, and she was very, very hesitant on that, but okay, we'll go ahead and do that. But you start pushing up against rating agencies already having an issue and reviewing folks just due to COVID. And because of, I think it would be helpful for me to go over the fiscal year authorizations to where you see we just added a large amount of debt in authorization in 1 year between the library and the fire station.
Mm-hmm.
And so to have to add that without being able to show a grant for it, or already have the library done and rescind the grant portion.
Okay.
It doesn't put us in the best position. Let's put it.
Okay.
And the other thing too is, as we're working this out, we're not talking like years to try and find some of these other financing sources. Some of them, the CDBG is going to be a while, but some of the other ones we see can come sooner.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so, and I understand all the uncertainties, but I do agree, like, we got to take baby steps. And so let's get the land and say, this is it, okay, now we know where we're going and we can design toward that. And, there also can be the aspect of when we don't go to bid, put things out to bid, as Dennis had said, maybe we can get the pricing down. So we don't want to ask for more than what we need.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
You satisfied, Chris?
Just, yeah.
Wait.
It's good. I'll have
before you
a
go,
I'm good.
Jennifer, Jen? Yeah, I see you, Chief. Jen,
Yeah, I have a question for Liz, and I am not asking this for the people at home. This is a genuine question, even though it's probably obvious to a lot of you. When you say that making a misstep in terms of how we handle this appropriation request, for instance, if we ask for money that we don't actually have a grant for, when you say that it will trigger a bond, it could trigger a bond rating review, the consequence of that, I think, this is my question to you, is the consequence of that our debt becomes more expensive, not just for this project, but for any project that we want to bond for.
That is a correct statement.
Okay.
What it can result in is a downgrade, which means your interest rate goes higher for everything.
Thank you.
Well, that's good news.
Sorry, I didn't.
I'm just teasing. Mayor, do you mind if the chief speaks? You want to add to that?
I just want to, it's very much directed right to that. The sooner we can do this, the better, because interest rates are so low. I think someone, either you, David, or someone else in a private conversation with me said, it's like asking for, money, and then we're going to give you money back type of thing. It's the interest rates are so low now that if we had to go someplace else for extra money, we need to know how much that is for sure. But it's just, this is a very opportune time for that to happen. And the sooner we can get to that, the better.
Thank you. I didn't say that you get money back. If I said anything, it's that the money is so cheap. It's really, you're just borrowing. You're just borrowing principal at this moment in time.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do anything, all else being equal, if you're going to, if you need to borrow money, it's a very good time to do that. Not all else being equal, though.
I would.
Go ahead, Liz.
I just want to say that the interest cost is probably less than the escalation cost.
Exactly. Chief.
Yeah, so after listening to Dennis's comments and Liz's comments, and knowing what the budget is, the $5 million increase, if we were to go out and be aggressive like we're planning on getting grants, as long as the city council knows that that is not to lower the 5 million, but enhance it, I think that the plan of action, if city council was to be amenable to that, I think is a solid one, because I do believe, after conversations that has come out of the mayor's office and conversations that I have, that there is money out there that can offset this project, that will put us in a good spot. I just want to make sure that money, if we're able to go out and get that's not going to lower the 5 million. That's going to get us to where we need to be. And if people are comfortable with that.
Chief, let me restate that a little bit. I think for the benefit of the counselors, it means that if you're going to use the word offset, then it would be that we would ask for $6.7 million and the grants would offset the $6.7 million. But if we ask for $5 million, any grants that we ask for in the future and get are not offsets, but are in addition to the $5 million. Is that correct? Okay.
It is. We'll have, I'll look at the wording, because I could be similar wording as the original 10 million, I believe, but that wording can be amended.
Looks like, all right, I've got a list. President Stemple.
I just want to be frank. So whether we're asking the council for 5 million, letting them know that any additional fundings in addition to the 5 million, we're stepping pretty close to sounding like the council will be appropriating for a project we just can't afford. Knowing that there's a lacking of 1.7 million that needs to be appropriated for, whether it's by a grant that we need to find X, Y, and Z. And it sounds like we have a lot of time, a year and a half or what have you. But I'm concerned about presenting that to the council, and I'm concerned about sharing that with the community. And so any insight there in terms of Like, what are we doing? What are the optics here? You know, like we're talking about money that doesn't exist yet. And we'd be allocating money for a project that's not whole. And so that's my concern.
The only,
Yeah, go ahead, Liz.
the only thing I would say to that is that our concern has been that we don't want to ask for more than what we need. And so it isn't that we want to do 1.7 million. We don't know if the bids will come in less. And so we don't want to authorize more than what we need.
Liz, not Liz, President Stemple. In the perfect world, you're absolutely right, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure that the optics are the same as they would be in the perfect world. Again, what we have here is we have the end of a long series of events that began a long time ago, and we're at the end of it. It's not the beginning of it. It's not separate from anything. It's the end of a long and tedious project that now needs to have complete funding. And what this committee is trying to do in its discussion with the council is just to say the reality is that with this amount of money, 5 million as the example, we believe we can make this work. And if we can't make it work with the 5 million based on other credible evidence, if we needed to come back to the council for additional funds, it would be within the $25 million budget that is being presented by us asking for $5 million. So it'd be in the form of grants or offsets that you receive. So that's the only way I can present it as the reality of what this is. In the perfect world, this would not be a request that I would necessarily advise my committee to make to the city council. But because we are in unique times and we've gone this far, the strategy here is to try to bring it to an end where it works for everybody, including the taxpayers. So anyway, Ginny DeSorger is now on and would like to speak.
Thank you. Thank you for recognizing me, and thank you all for all of your hard work. I think my question would be, when we are talking about this borrowing, it's going to happen when we actually do the borrowing, because we said that we wanted to actually borrow 20 million for the library, knowing that we were going to get the grant, but that's what we actually had to put into for the state. We had to give them that figure. Now we're probably going to say that we need to borrow 15 million, but that the money that we're talking about borrowing, we're not actually going to take that money until probably 2024. Is that correct? 2024, 25? At which point won't the interest rates probably be up? First, I'm concerned that we are going to have a change in our bond rating, because I think this puts us right at the top of the ceiling. And I'm concerned, very concerned, that we're going to be spending so much that we're not going to be able to get the firemen out of a temporary fire station, and that we are biting off more than we can chew in the middle of a pandemic, where we have to have our eyes open and say, you know, life really is different than it was a year ago. I wanted the library to happen. I voted for that and encouraged other people to. And I'm looking at the economics, and I have my neck wrap on because I'm sitting looking at the numbers and worrying that we are actually right at the edge. But I think the question is, when we get to the borrowing, it's not going to be at the number that it is right now, because we actually don't borrow till the completion, correct? That's it.
It's correct that we don't borrow to the completion, but the problem is that until we can rescind things, we have added a lot of authorization. And that's what they look at. They look at total authorizations, whether you ended up bonding for it or not. They're looking as that's a potential obligation. And so that's the issue. If it wasn't happening all at the same time, this would be a different story. And it's hard, again, because we're having to move faster because of escalating costs and the timeline with the library and their grant. It's not, as David said, this isn't the usual story, the usual way things happen, but it can work, and we do stay always within 8 to 10% of the budget. The library as well, just to talk about this a little bit, we get the grant money up front. So we're spending the grant money first. That's a very unusual grant. So we aren't even having to take out any bands until we have gone through our library grant, any temporary borrowings. So that is very helpful. I don't know what, we are going to bond in 2024. I'm beginning to wonder, will the library be done a little sooner than originally thought? But I don't know that at this point. So I just think that I understand there's many moving parts and people are not comfortable with moving parts. And I get that, but it's the situation we're in. And all we can do is take each of those and address them one at a time as we reach them.
All right, John Andrews.
Because it is getting late. I just wanted to say that the one project theory we were looking at with the library and the fire department, the library, the burden is kind of all being dumped on the public safety end of this. It's not intentional, obviously, but the library, anything it can do to save money. We came under budget for the high school. We're under budget for the community center. We damn well better be under budget for this library, and we ought to try at all costs to not bare bones it, and I don't like that term, but we need to minimize our liability with that library to help the public safety. That's the only thing I wanted to get by. And I realize they've already done that with the demolition cost, but we need to continue to do that, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thanks, John. All right, the hour is growing late. Are there any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay. I'm going to then move. We don't have enough information at this point to go into executive. Set next meeting. Next meeting date will be in 2 weeks at 4 o'clock. I don't have anything to go into executive session about. So at this point, unless anybody wants to say something, I would move. I would take a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Before I do that. That's too fast. I want to thank everyone.
I tried.
I tried?
Butch.
Hey, Butch.
David, would make a sense for us to meet again next week? Are you comfortable meeting in 2 weeks? We're really under the gun here.
Yeah,
I think that would only be appropriate if Neil and Dennis thought they would have, correct me if I'm wrong, additional information in a week. I'm not sure they're there yet. I'm not sure. I can't say that I'm there yet. So only in terms of the negotiation. So I'm not sure that
okay.
Is all that helpful, but David is the chair, and if he wishes to do that or contemplate doing that, then I'm open to that. I'm just saying, only if we're not doing the same thing twice.
Well, between now and 2 weeks is also the Ways and Means meeting, and I think the council will meet to do its first reading before we meet again. I don't have my calendar in front of me, but I think that that's the case.
So,
No?
no, I didn't say that. I'm saying maybe it's appropriate for me to alert you in the next few days as to whether we have enough information to create an
So
additional.
let me ask this of the group. Just tell me no if you can't meet a week from now at 4 o'clock.
Yes.
Carol can't.
I can't, Liz.
Liz can't. I can.
All right.
Jen can.
Okay. We need a meeting. Jean, you're all set?
No, it's the library building committee.
Oh, that's right. That's
why we
why
did
we're
it.
doing this.
Okay.
Maybe,
It would have to be either a later meeting or an earlier meeting.
or maybe we could negotiate with them to give us the slot.
Well, that's a good thought.
I don't know. I don't know what to do on this one. I'd like to keep the meeting in 2 weeks, and
Yeah.
if we have to poll people to do a special meeting, then we'll do it. I don't even know what times are available for the webcam.
Absolutely. I think it's a good question, Chief, but it's one that we cannot answer at this time.
Anybody else have a suggestion? I'm open. Jen, nobody? Okay.
I'm just going to block the time from 3 to 7 and assume on next
Before I make
Thursday.
the motion to adjourn, I want to thank everyone who participated in this meeting. Thank you. It was a very good meeting. It's a good beginning to a very important discussion about what to do. I appreciate the counselors coming on and giving us their feedback. I appreciate those members of the public that have entered this meeting to see what's going on firsthand. And I thank, of course, my committee members, both voting and non-voting members, for the hard work that we've already done. And believe it or not, it's going to get very difficult from here on in. So fasten your seatbelts, get a lot of sleep, eat well.
I would agree with that. I second that.
I just wanted to say that I, as the chair, appreciate all of you coming to this meeting. It was a good meeting. So with that as the spirit, may I hear a motion to adjourn? Who's that?
Butch.
Second, Carol.
Who made the motion?
Butch.
Butch.
Okay. I'm trying to be cautious about doing roll call votes because if anybody were to say, because I can't see and I'd rather just have it on the record that we do. So here we go. If there's no discussion, then all in favor of adjourning, I'll go through the list. Mayor Rita Gardner?
Yes.
Butch Hawkins?
Yes.
Chief Strahan?
Yes.
David Mascarotello?
Yes.
Did you say yes?
Yes.
You said it softly. Are you fading?
No, I'm not fading yet. It's getting close though.
Bill Collins?
Yes.
Amy McMahon?
Yes.
Porgy?
Yes.
Steve Draculich?
Yes.
Jen Stromsten? Liz Gilman?
Yes.
Yes.
Jean Wall? David
Yes.
Singer? Yes. Thank you very much. And a good night to all.
Thank you.
Yes. I echo David's comments. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day.